On this week's show, discussing real talk on reality capture with Dylan John. In this week's news, construction disruption, concrete project coverage, drones, and more. All right. I'm settled in. My background's a little new, but my co-host is not new. Tannis, how are you this morning?
I'm great, Jeff. It is 27 degrees here. So normally when we're on the show, I'm complaining about how cold it is in Canada. Sun's out. It's no issues with the weather. It's nice to get some sunshine and a little bit of warm weather here. But on a personal note, I got a puppy. I got a Labradoodle. So my husband and I welcomed Tucker to the family. So that's been quite an interesting month and a half. It's been a while since I've had a puppy in the house, and all the training fun, but also teething and chewing on everything, and her exploring the world has been quite the experience. So much fun. She's fantastic. So that's what's new with me.
Oh, wow. A puppy. And it's post-COVID. So it's not a COVID puppy. It's a post-COVID puppy. Yep. Yes, there was plenty of COVID puppies, but this is a post-COVID puppy. And she decided to join you for the couple of months a year where it's nice and warm and you don't have to, and it's not so wet right now.
That's it. Yeah. A couple months from now, she might be wishing she was back on the mainland where it's not so rainy, but that's okay. She's a Labradoodle. I'm sure she likes the water. We haven't really done much swimming yet. She's still pretty young, but hopefully she likes the rain because we get 8 months a year of rain here.
Well, she got the coat for it, so hopefully she does. And you brought a fantastic guest with you from a company I am familiar with. But Dylan John, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Jeff. How are you, sir? It's a beautiful day in Atlanta.
See? It's probably hot, though. It's probably hot.
It is hot, but it's always pretty nice here in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta's always popping, so it's great to be here.
I love me some Atlanta, our roots, Josh Bone, Rob McKinney, all the Atlanta folks. That's how I knew you. We did our first road show there. So I'm really excited to kind of catch up and hear what you're doing there. But before we get into that, we got to pause for the cause.
It's important everyone supports a culture of well-being in the field and is equipped with the tools to help prevent suicide in construction. Procore Safety Qualified courses were built in partnership with our customers, elevating enhancements to their standard OSHA training. And the Bringing the Right Mindset series equips individuals and leaders alike with the skills necessary to really build resilient teams. We've made these 3 courses available for free and on demand, and they're offered both in English as well as Spanish, and they are CEU certifiable. Procore.com/certified-qualified is where we host our Procore's learning portal, and anyone can use their Procore credentials or create a free account to get started.
All right, you guys are getting tired of this, but I'm not going to stop saying it. We're back on YouTube, youtube.com/@the ConTech If all of you go sign up and subscribe, I won't have to say it anymore, and you will get 20 seconds back of your life and my voice. That's right. You can do it by just going out there and clicking that subscribe button. At the ConTech Crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems, and we've always believed in our sponsors. So much so that I went to work for one of them. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype, and it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision-making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. Check out Join, the collaborative project delivery platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build. All right, we are back. And as part of kind of a new flow to the show, if you haven't been tuning in, we're really focusing on the users of technology, the folks that, not the folks behind the tech, but the folks behind actually using the tech, which is why I'm excited for Dylan to join us today. But also, we have a little bit of an academic with us as well, an adjunct professor at Georgia Southern University. And in the pre-call, we had some good conversations about what's been going on there too. So first of all, Dylan, say hello to everybody and give them a little bit of your background, because it's a pretty cool history into getting how you got here today.
Again, I'm Dylan John. I'm actually David Dylan John, so I got 3 first names. So when it comes to eating and meal times, I typically have to feed all 3 of them. So there's my excuse for eating a bunch more than the typical. When it comes down to it, so construction has much for me, like most of my peers, I guess, in construction is more often than not, there is some form of a family connection, and I grew up in the construction business back in the beautiful island country of Sri Lanka. And my father was a general contractor, originally very small scale, just doing luxury residential projects. Then he expanded to a mid-scale commercial. And the whole objective and goal was to come to the United States, get an education in construction. At the time, I wanted to get an education in civil engineering. Wasn't very familiar with the construction management role, if you will, because we don't really have that as a profession per se. It's typically managed by an architect or an engineer. That those are the people who typically play the construction manager's role contractually in Sri Lanka. So the objective was to become a civil engineer and then go back. But then I found construction management at Georgia Southern. Started doing my degree over there, my bachelor's degree. And interestingly, I failed out of high school, so college was never really on the books. But somehow I managed to kind of get into college with the SATs. I got a scholarship with an organization called Rotary. So they have a program called the Georgia Rotary Student Program. So that's how I ended up here in 2011. Started pursuing my higher studies here. And working through the process at Georgia Southern, I was given an assignment in the BIM course to create a BIM execution plan, or a BIM a strategic plan for a project. So, of course, since my dad was a general contractor, and I just was kind of curious as to whether I could expand the scope of my assignment. So I ended up trying to draw out a BIM introduction plan or technology implementation plan for my father's company. So that's what I was kind of doing in the course. And the professor got so excited. He said, man, you really put a lot of work into this. You probably need to do a master's. Now, for a guy who barely made it into college, master's wasn't really the plan. But I guess that assignment led me to a master's, and here I am as an adjunct professor. So I guess that goes to show you what the academic journey has been. But from a construction standpoint, I grew up watching my dad do construction projects. Every Sunday was a drive to the church. After we finished church, my mom, who was the director of business development, my father, who was, of course, the president, so we'd get in the car and we'd visit all the job sites. So that's how I kind of grew up and fell in love with the industry. So coming here to the United States, I was trying to learn and go back and join him. I did a couple of internships with my dad. Absolutely loved it, but I think I fell in love with the technology aspect of construction and how it was kind of implemented here versus what I saw in Sri Lanka. So I think I saw more opportunity here. And I think there's a lot of area to grow, but that's also kind of the exciting part, right? So it's not overtly mature. There's a lot of, I think, opportunity for growth, which excited me. Found the love of my life here in Atlanta, and as a result, I've ended here, both in construction and as an industry guy, and also as an academic, as an adjunct professor at Georgia Southern.
In the pre-show, and obviously we've had a chance to connect in advance of this, it sounds like you dabble in a lot of things and you get involved in quite a few projects and quite a few technology deployments. What does a day in the life of Dylan look like? When you get up and drive into work in the morning and it's a Tuesday, what does a typical Tuesday look like for Dylan?
Oh, absolutely. A typical Tuesday, well, I get up and drive into work and connect with project engineer and intern, kind of do a quick rundown of our list of activities. So typical project manager's approach, right? Just kind of seeing what our high-level items are for the day, whether we accomplished everything we wanted to touch on the previous day. And then a quick chit-chat with the superintendent, just kind of seeing where we're at, what we have the next couple of days. That tends to set my pace for the day, if you will, because now I know what my hot-button items are. You picked a good day to ask as well, because Tuesdays are a couple of meetings on Tuesdays. So we then hit our team meeting and our subcontractor meeting and so on and so forth in sequence. And then after that, lunch, don't forget lunch, that's important too. Make sure that I grab some lunch typically with the team. Don't like to eat alone. It's always good to do something as a community. So we'd grab lunch together, either with the team, a subcontractor, or in some shape or form. And then after that, it's coming back and, working on either a schedule or a pay application. Typically, my weeks are sequenced out in terms of what I know my week's deliverables are. So if I know a pay application is coming up, typically that'll kind of take priority. Or if we have our internal progress review meetings coming up, that takes center stage. And then, of course, you have the weeks where everything piles on top of each other. And then you're trying to figure out, how do we divide and conquer? So that's a typical day. I think I do a fair number of touch bases with subcontractors. I really, truly, at my core, do take a fair amount of time to try and connect with subcontractors, chit-chat with the owner. It's not uncommon for me to hop on a call with an architect and chit-chat for about an hour and, talk about topics that are not just centric to the project, but, really trying to get to know each other as individuals. Because when you know the person behind the task you're trying to accomplish, I think you accomplish a lot more as opposed to just dealing with someone who's with a title. Because when you're dealing with a person as opposed to a title, I think it makes the magic happen. So
absolutely, Jeff and I talk about that a lot. We spend a lot of time at industry events, and outside of that, just meeting with people, meeting with organizations and project teams and individuals that are out there doing amazing things and breaking walls down and innovating. And that's something that that Jeff, I know really excites you. It excites me. It's just the connections that we build with people throughout the journey. You can get scientific about process. You can get scientific about technology, but it's people that are out there making it happen. As much as ChatGPT is out there, and we'll touch on ChatGPT later. We had some good discussion in the pre-show around that. How much time do you get to spend on site, Dylan? Do you in your focus with technology and deploying innovative technology on projects, do you get a lot of time to interact with teams out on site and really get feedback?
Oh, absolutely. So,
awesome.
So that's really cool that you're housed there on the job, because I bet you it gives you a bit of a different perspective on how you're using tools and communication and how the job's running. So give us a little rundown about, kind of what those tools are you're using and kind of leaning into, and how you're looking at technology and its role on you from your perspective, right? From that project manager perspective.
Absolutely. So I'll give a little bit of a quick backdrop. So when I did my master's thesis at Georgia Southern, I did it on BIM and construction performance. And the whole objective was to try and identify that as your BIM matures in implementation, as to how really it impacts your performance criteria and what kind of performance, return you're seeing, if you will. The product of the thesis, if you will, was developing a CKPI, a construction key performance indicator, that focused on quality goals, safety goals, and a list of different goals. And this was in 2018 when I finished my master's. So when I went into my role as a project manager, my objective always was, I know that we're kind of in silos in sometimes technology and in construction on the field and even project management, right? It's almost like you have three distinct silos. So field and PMs kind of, I think, have meshed a little more together over time as you've had these different tools like Proco and increased and enhanced communication and so on. But construction technology has always kind of been this this add-on service, if you will, that we almost always look at, right? So it's that it's those superstars we call upon when we feel like we have a problem that they have a different vantage point, which I think is great, but also at the same time, it's still in silos. So from a project manager's lens, when I went in or came into this role as a project manager, even when I started as assistant project manager at the previous company, my objective was to try and see, okay, how do I leverage technology to touch on the very three most rudimentary bases: quality, safety, and profitability. Right? Those are kind of my core objectives. Okay, how do I really touch on quality, safety, and profitability? So in making that kind of a goal, I would be on the lookout for different software, trying to see as to how we can leverage certain tools, processes, if you will, and connect it to our workflow and our processes to identify how better we can improve what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it wasn't trying to really disrupt or change anything specific, but it was more, okay, what do I find that's in alignment, that's a relatively easy connection, if you will. So initially, at the previous, with my previous employer, I'd leveraged Assemble because they had a pretty neat model feed into your iPad at the time. And at that time, Assemble was not with Autodesk, so they were their standalone. And we had leveraged that as a possible means of shooting that model into the field. That wasn't the purpose of Assemble. I know it was more of a pre-con tool, but nonetheless, that was kind of our creative approach to kind of leverage it and show kind of visual use cases, if you will. And there were times, at a meeting where an architect may not have necessarily known a certain dimension, and we were able to pull it up on the iPad, push it to the screen, and take a quick measurement of the model in Assemble, So there were some interesting ways in which we leveraged that tool. But of course, as we went along, that was also clunky because that's not what it was designed to do. So then, we started now playing with Navisworks and, trying to leverage that model. And of course, myself included, our team wasn't very experienced in the use of these modeling tools. So now we were leveraging Navisworks and trying to kind of figure it out as we go. I kind of had it was kind of funny because I'd asked my mechanical contractor to do like a dry run coordination show with me just before our BIM coordination meeting. Just so that I could learn how to go through the process, and then at the BIM coordination meeting, I was acting like I had done this, relationship worked out there as well.
You are not the first person to do that. In fact, I know that for sure.
So that was one tool we used was Navisworks. I had met a fellow professor at Georgia Tech and a tool called Filio. His name is Max. So I connected with him and I was using Filio. So it's just very generic photo documentation, but at least it locates you on the drawings. It has a neat little photo report. So on my first project at Winter, we were kind of leveraging that as a means of showcasing certain photo reports and communicating information. After that, on my most recent project, connected with another friend on LinkedIn. We had met for dinner here in Atlanta just to kind of geek out about construction technology. And then he had told me that he was coming for his second visit. And this was just about the time I was starting my project or kickstarting the project off. And he had said, I'm on the road kind of promoting the software. So I told him, hey, man, don't really have the money or the budget to dedicate to it now, but if we can cut a deal where I provide you with feedback on your software as you develop it and you allow me to use your software, maybe we can work something out. So that's what we did. And Construct N AI is the tool I use right now. It allows for 360 photo documentation with the video walks. And interestingly, it also allows you to bring your drone capture into the same source, if you will. It also allows you to take pictures with your camera and bring it in. And I know there are a bunch of tools out there that does it, but the one we're using right now on my project specifically is Construct N. So I know that was kind of a long sequential story of the different software we're using and how we kind of leverage it, but that's how I've kind of approached it so far.
Well, this goes to show you, Tannis, that not everything we do is scripted and talked about beforehand, because neither of you will know this because, well, a little behind the scenes for everybody listening is we don't actually record every Friday anymore because we're out on the road a lot. So I record them in spurts. And I actually had yesterday KP Reddy from Shadow Ventures, who works very closely with ConstructN, and we talked a lot about ConstructN's approach and the approach behind this. And he referenced using people. He didn't talk about you, Dylan, but he referenced it in the generic. So, wow, is that a connection and a half right there? So that's pretty cool. I think ConstructN is really approaching this from a value add perspective. So what's that value add? Like, what is it for you as the PM, right? Because you're not necessarily the tech side. You're the return side, right? You're the I need something side. What need is that satiating? You know, like you said, you like lunch. Like this is technology lunch. Like what are we eating for lunch here?
So I think the visual communication is without a doubt, I think the low-hanging fruit to talk about, right? Communication is streamlined. I'm able to communicate issues with my subcontractors pretty easily, give them snapshots of locations. I'm able to do BIM model comparisons and say, hey, this is what the design intent is. This is where we're off. We also had a visual where we had a retaining wall that we had built. And the retaining wall was just slightly off in terms of how they had built it. And while it wasn't a source of truth, if you will, right, that we can contractually reference, nonetheless, we were able to talk about it and kind of see what the intent and thought process, because it was a delegated design, soil nail wall engineered system. So it was slightly off, but we were able to kind of communicate what our concerns on site were pretty easily with the visuals. We've also had some interesting items on our project in terms of coordination and slightly different sequencing that we've been able to kind of visually set eyes on in the model that weren't necessarily, and interestingly, some people weren't able to visualize it in terms of what was on the drawings, just because of the slightly different variation or sequence it was going in. So we were able to kind of break that apart and do a walkthrough and put people at ease in terms of, okay, this is how this is sequenced and this is how it's playing out. So that's the low-hanging fruit. Now, ConstructN has also started doing schedule analysis with the leveraging of reality capture and photo capture. We haven't dove too deep into that process as of yet. We're in the process of setting up the framework for it. So I'm very excited to see it. Now, we have discussed, of course, some limitations and so on and so forth, but I think the prospects of what its capability is extremely exciting. And I think from a project management standpoint, if it's able to do some of that, I think there is, if not a core source of truth, if you will, in terms of information for me, at the very least, it gives me a baseline that I may otherwise not have that I could leverage. I'm pretty sure the accuracy will improve of time, but I think that's still a work in progress.
I think you're right. I think that's the race, and there's quite a few companies out there doing this, right? Yep. And that's the beauty of an arms race, is that in our world, that's a great thing. And them taking the sort of the approach with you of really going to the problem and studying the problem and giving you pieces to solve along the way, everybody's got a different attack at it, right? And this is a good one. I think they've got some future stuff. I love the idea of, analyzing your schedule and sequencing and progress tracking and, really then lining that up to the model as they get more accurate to bring things back to you. Before I let it go over to Tannis, though, really quick, I will bring us back to the pre-show a little bit, because you hit on something in the pre-show that is near and dear to my heart, and Tannis will know this. I hate ROI. I can't stand return on investment, because it is just a completely misunderstood term. Because for every minute we save, it's not like we put that minute back, right? Mm-hmm. We use that minute for something else. So it's all about, where your focus is, and you have a different term for it. So let people know what your term and approach is there.
Absolutely. So my reference to ROI is return on implementation. And I truly believe in that being the case, because unless we really study and learn something, we're not going to understand how to really leverage it for the traditional ROI, if I were to call it that, we typically talk about. Because really, for it to make sense in dollars, you need to gain efficiency. In order to gain efficiency, you need to understand the tool, gain the practice, find out the pain points, really reconfigure your workflows. Because really and truly, it's not as simple as just taking something and inserting it into our existing workflow, right? Of course, we want that to happen, but at the same time, there are adjustments that are required to flex a little bit to make sure that we're able to really leverage the tool. Now, if we don't play with the tool, there is no baseline for us to really gauge how to practice and pursue efficiency. So I truly think you have to practice implementation. Now, of course, there are barriers to that. There's cost factors to it, size of companies and not being able to buy broad-based licenses. But I use this even with talking to some of my students, or even when I'm in general talking about construction technology. I mean, I would look really silly if I went for a job presentation today and said, "Hey guys, I use a laptop," right? Well, in the past, I used to use a typewriter, or I used to write a letter by hand, and use snail mail, whatever you want to call it. But it's not enough for me to go and tell you, "Hey, from a technology standpoint, I'm really advanced. I use a laptop." Right? 5 years from now, we're not going to go and say, "Hey, I use XYZ construction technology tools." I almost feel like when the maturity of tech comes into construction, we'll almost approach it in the format of, well, yeah, it's like having a laptop. You shouldn't be having it anyway. There's nothing to really talk about, I don't think we're there yet, but once we get there, it's going to be ridiculous almost. So when I talk to people about, when you think about return on investment, if you will, I also caution them to think, well, you didn't really bat an eyelid about laptops. Laptop saves you time. Agree. Sure, it was probably very expensive to buy computers when you were early adopters. Over time, it's become cheaper, and I think construction tech in some cases may follow the same kind of principle, where an early adopter probably may invest a little bit more in terms of the hardware and software and so on. But hey, they also get a head start at creating special use cases. So there's a trade-off, I think, that, from an innovation standpoint, if you have an innovation mindset, I think you could look at return on implementation more than you can look at return on investment.
Man, I love that mic drop there. And Tannis, I know that you and I've talked about this a lot, and that's the focus we want to see. We want to see the day when technology is table stakes for this industry, right? So that, some of the innovative things we'll be talking about is not, do we have a data model? It's how do we leverage the data model at an enterprise level to drive entire project success forward, those kinds of things. So you've got to be chomping at the bit to jump in. So I'll let you jump in, Tannis.
This is a topic I'm passionate about because there's so much dialogue in the industry around return on investment. And I hear these conversations all the time. And, especially at conferences, I'll see people get up and they'll say, we spent X number of dollars, we gained Y number of dollars. There's the ROI, bada bing, bada boom, simple as that. And it's not as simple as that. When you look at the deployment of technology, how do you quantify the savings of a problem that didn't happen? That's incredibly difficult to do. So if you're deploying a solution and that solution is preventing problems from occurring, how do you put a price tag on that? It's not quite that straightforward. And to your point, Dylan, it's not as simple as just buying tech and deploying and saying here's the cost of licenses. There's a whole implementation process that surrounds that. There's evaluation, there's business requirements, there's deployment, there's software licenses, there's training, there's awareness, there's championship out on site and in the industry. I mean, it is a substantial investment that you're making beyond just the financial component. And it really is an implementation. And I love the fact that you're focusing on that. It's return on all of the effort that goes in, not just the financial commitment. It's not as simple as just quantifying dollars in versus dollars out. It's not that easy. I wish it was, because it would be a lot easier to go out to the industry and say, you should have drones because here's what you'll spend and here's what you'll make. But it's just not that straightforward. And it's interesting because when you're analyzing return on investment, and like I said, we hear this at conferences all the time. Oftentimes what you'll see in research studies is the best of the best, right? The project team that, rolled out some new tech and it didn't go very well is probably not going to put their hand up and say, hey, we'd love a case study to be done on this project for obvious reasons. So, sometimes when people are getting up and it's good that people are championing the use of technology, but we really have to take a step back and understand as an industry what is invested when tech is deployed. And it's not as simple as just getting it down to dollar for dollar analysis. And once we understand that and we start to rethink how we're approaching that return discussion, you end up in a place like you're guiding us to, which is return on implementation and really understanding what are we investing holistically versus what are we gaining. And what has that journey yielded as a result? And it's more than just cost savings. And to your point earlier, safety, quality, morale, sometimes it's just culture, right? Sometimes it's just a better experience for people. That doesn't necessarily quantify easily in terms of, productivity gain, but maybe people are happier and that's got a reduction in attrition for trades professionals. There's so many factors there to consider. So I love this concept and I love the return on implementation. I think we just found the tagline for the show, Jeff. So I think we can, we don't need to wordsmith that at all after the fact. That's fantastic. Dylan, I have to ask, you're talking about, deploying technology, and you referenced that the scheduling analytics is something that you haven't really dug into yet. Sometimes within the industry, you hear from individuals, especially project managers, I'm just so busy. I've got so many things going on. I just don't have time. So you're making time. It sounds like you're being very strategic about evaluating technology, investing in technology, deploying technology, and iterating upon that. What advice would you give to a project manager or construction manager out there that's like, I just don't have time for this?
A typical project management approach, and at least in my mindset, is, if you have a gigantic, arduous task, just break it into small bite-sized pieces, right? I mean, really, really rudimentary at that point. So if you're looking at technology and its implementation and its time consumption, sometimes it's overwhelming because we think of the amount of things that the tool can do, and we're just overwhelmed by all its capacity, and we're unable to implement any or all of it, right? So as a result, we shy away and we kind of walk away and do our own thing. So, I'll be very honest, when we talk about me investing time, I have to kind of give a shout out to my project engineer, Leah Carter, and our intern, Hannah Jackson, because the two of them are the ones who pretty much run the captures. They observe the workflows. Then when I sit down and kind of go through the process with them, they'll give me a report of what failed, what didn't work, and I've kind of trained them in the mindset of, hey, we're trying to analyze this from a workflow perspective. We're not just trying to do a task, check off the box, keep moving, right? So if we are trying to analyze, okay, how do I make this easier for the next team that does this, right? I need to understand what the pain points are, and more than just understanding, I need to communicate it, right? So we have a pretty regular cadence of conversation with Constructin's team where we'll give them feedback and say, hey guys, this is not acceptable. The date on the capture is wrong. Or, hey guys, the app is too heavy in terms of its load on the phone, and now you want me to capture all the video data. My phone doesn't have enough capacity to store the video data, right? So you have all these practical use case issues, and you communicate that back, then the team's able to kind of give you some advice on how to improve it, right? Because sometimes they may have a solution, sometimes they may not, and that's fine. So in terms of advising to a project manager who is leveraging tools, I would say, break it into bite-sized pieces in terms of the information you're pursuing. Identify a minimalistic workflow to identify how to kind of approach it, pursue that workflow, and then adjust, right? And then once you get comfort level, you're more efficient at doing that one piece, Now let's find the next one, right? The first one for us was, okay, let's figure out how to take 360 images with this video walk, right? That's why we're not at the schedule thing yet, because we just wanted to understand how to use this tool, right? So initially, when we started doing the walks, we figured out, well, if you hold the camera too high, when you do a model comparison, you're in the flow of the second flow, right? So you have to adjust your camera height, right? Then we realized, well, when your building is not fully built, right, the capture radius is typically 5 feet. So unless you're close to a wall, you're not getting sufficient data capture. So when you're doing comparisons, you have a slight deviation in vantage point. So now we adjusted our method of walking the site to like a snake formation so that we capture all those data points, right? So we're observing our workflow, we're adjusting our practices, and now we feel like we're somewhat masters of that step. So our next step now is, okay, now let's try and evaluate schedule, right? So now we leverage the schedule, and then we'll take that into bite-sized pieces. I'm sure we don't want to eat it all at once either. So it's just breaking it into small bite-sized pieces. And if there is any industry that I am familiar with in terms of cohesiveness to help and kind of cheer each other on, it's the construction industry. You know, even if we're in different companies, we may not share specific workflows with you. But hey, if you're having a problem and someone wants to talk about it, right, there is a fair amount of cross-sharing of ideas and exchanges. And really and truly, I think we need to build a stronger base. I see a lot of user groups in terms of construction technology professionals, your BIM groups and, your VDC groups and so on. I really think we need to, have more project managers in those, or better yet, actually project managers who are championing construction technologies in their own realms that are, really kind of having these conversations, because sometimes the conversations we're thinking through is not necessarily the same approach as the same issues that our ConTech professionals are pursuing, right? We're all in the same business. We're all trying to build the building and make it efficient and kind of go through the production of the life cycle, if you will. But we're all focused on our own parts, as we should be, right? But I think there is some bridging of the silos we need to do as well in the process.
That's fantastic. And I agree. I mean, there's so much opportunity for us to learn from each other, share experience, and share different experience, right? Because by nature of having different backgrounds, we come at processes or workflows from very different perspectives. And whether you're developing tech or deploying tech or using tech, I mean, sharing those insights allows us all to learn and grow and become better at what we do and ultimately use tech more effectively. And I love the fact that you said that we champion each other in construction, because we do. I mean, we, as an industry, we get labeled as laggards when it comes to technology deployment. And I think that can't be further from the truth. There's so many fantastic initiatives out there right now that people are driving innovation. They're deploying technology. They're developing new technology. And I think sometimes that gets a little bit shadowed by some of the discourse around construction still lagging in tech. Historically the industry did, but that's absolutely changing now. And you're spot on. I mean, there are a lot of champions out there that are happy to pick up the phone, have a conversation. If you're running into a problem, you're trying to do something with a solution you're working with, there's somebody else out there who has run into the same problem, very likely, and would be more than willing to help walk you through it. And as an industry, I think we do a good job at that. And there's always more opportunity to collaborate and grow and share insights and stories. So that's fantastic. I have to ask though, in your organization, you're going to have individuals that have a lot of industry experience, and you're going to have new graduates, new industry entrants that are coming into the industry and probably have a lot of excitement around the use of technology, visions for the future. How do you, as a project manager, engage all of those different experience profiles, different backgrounds, different ideas for how technology can be leveraged? How do you get everybody working together and on the same page?
I mean, I agree, right? You have everyone at different levels, and kind of it's a challenge. Thankfully, at Winter so far, my experience has been that I've always had tech forward superintendents or tech forward project engineers who are kind of even if they're not familiar with something, they're kind of open to learn and kind of get upbeat on it. Now, I have worked with superintendents. I have worked with a superintendent who dashed an iPad down once before because the model just wasn't working. So it happens.
Oh, no.
I'm not saying no, but that wasn't at my current employer. That was at a previous previous instance, right? And that came through because really and truly, sometimes when you know someone, and this is where the people dynamic is important, right? Understanding the person you're deploying to, right? I think that's a responsibility those who are promoting construction technology need to kind of be aware of, is that when you are engaging someone is understanding them for a person, right? Again, person versus title, not, title is great, but person versus title always. Because if you understand that they are going to be somewhat hesitant, right, and what their pain points are, a conversation may help you identify what some of their biggest frustrations in construction are, right? Is it the communication aspect of it? Is it the real navigation of the tool? What is it that really bothers them about tech, right? Once you figure that, then it really kind of gives you a strategy. Again, breaking it down to bite-sized pieces of how to approach them and really kind of shepherd them through, if you will, right? I mean, I've always looked at my project management role as we're here to clear roadblocks the best we can, right? Sometimes even we don't know how to clear the roadblock. I'm going to have to work with the superintendent to figure out what the roadblock is all about, right? But then at the end of the day, the project manager's role is to try and do what you need to from the outside to create the roadblock so that the traffic keeps moving, right? And if you take that same mindset even into construction technology deployment, right? It's okay, so what is the roadblock? What is the hang up that we're working through so that we can identify how to go about this? Far too often, we come up with an implementation strategy that's a kind of a catch-all, right? We kind of roll out an implementation strategy. And that's where we lose people, because with some people, all you got is one shot. If they lose trust in it, in the one shot, you've probably lost them for the rest of their career. Now they may be at the tail end of their career, but nonetheless, you've lost them for the next couple of years, right? So your implementation is going to kind of be shabby at that point, right? Mm-hmm. So really and truly, it's important to kind of figure out how do we shepherd people through, break that process down, and really engage the issues that would be low-hanging fruit for those individuals. So what really is going to be the magic for you? If I fix this, what is going to make your eyes light up, right? And then all of a sudden, if you can show them that it's a game changer, I think it begins to slowly but surely the ship may turn. And then I still say may turn because, some people it's just not going to turn.
Every once in a while, you're going to get somebody who doesn't turn. I think as I've been listening to you and kind of listening to your approach, especially, having project engineers and interns helping you out with the process, you lean on your academic and adjunct professorship as looking at things as a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. You really, each step that you've talked about, even great teachers identify the student, not the lesson, and realize where each student is coming from. So I think that's powerful. I'm wondering how it's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Because as you sit in a PM role at Winter, you have some control over what you're doing, but a lot of that is being, part of the company, right? The company is passing those tools along to you. Other tools, you might have an opportunity to work on a few new ones, but others. So I want to take you into that academic mind and just kind of open you up to what do you think the industry, as you're teaching, what do they need to know? What does the current leadership need to know about the future student, the future workforce coming to us? And what's your advice for them?
First and foremost, I think we have to coach them. Right. And I think there's an expectation of sink or swim, which I don't think works really with this, I guess, generation of students. Right. Mm-hmm. Sink or swim works to some folks. Right. But it's not a catch-all. It's not. We're going to be sadly mistaken if we expect sink or swim to produce the number of employees we need to do the production we need. Right. This really is another place where I personally feel construction technology can be a gap builder. Right. Because when I first started, I'd done research in construction tech. I'd done construction in Sri Lanka. I'd done some rudimentary stuff and came here. I was still struggling to kind of visualize certain 2D lines on a drawing and figure out what it really was going to be or look like, right? And now you have that gap in terms of students being put into positions where we don't have the luxury of time for them to learn, right? And it's terrible to say that, but we don't have the luxury of time for them to learn. So we really need to expedite that process. And sometimes one of the most successful forms of teaching, I feel, is visual learning. When people see it, they get it, they latch onto it, their mind kind of works, visualizes, it really begins to wrap around a lot more than just a narrative or a statement or a lecture or something like that. And in fact, with some of my coursework, I've started retracting a bit from a construction technology course. I've started retracting a bit from the actual specific modeling, especially because most of the students I teach are construction management students, right? So they don't need to know the intricate details of design, right? But what they need to know is, okay, how does all of this go together? How does this tie in? I think understanding, in order to lead them, I think we need to teach, we need to break down the process to parables almost, right? And what I mean by that is when I was teaching some of my interns and project engineers recently, I mean, some of them had no idea what an RFI is, what a section cut is, there's sometimes no concept of that, even though they've been through a 4-year program, right? Just because sometimes, also you have to recognize the last 2-3 years, some of them just had classes online entirely. So there was no one who was able to walk them through what we may have had 6-7 years ago, So there is this gap of student, if you will, that when they come into the industry, I feel like when we're coaching them, we have to kind of break it down into very understandable dynamics. So, I told someone, hey, if you look at the floor plan, just imagine that's God's view, right? God looking out from heaven. And if you want a section cut, right, that's after Adam ate the apple. Like he's seeing more things than he should ever be seen, right? And then, the reflected ceiling plan is when you're dead and go to hell and you're just looking for the lights, right? And but sometimes when you break it down like that, people get it, right? It's making things simple and consumable. So that people can kind of latch onto it. And I think the student that's coming today, and don't get me wrong, when I say this, I'm not saying that our students are any less capable. I'm not saying that our students are any less smart. In fact, they're probably smarter and more capable than we can comprehend in a simple conversation. But what we need to understand is that there is a dynamic difference in how we need to coach them. The nurturing in the industry needs to be a little bit more adaptive. It can't be just hey, go sink or swim.
No, you did it. You did a great job of breaking that down. And I love the idea of, putting things into digestible chunks. I don't think I would love to steal that one you just did, but I don't know that I would ever do it justice. But that's my favorite thing to do is just break things down like that so they can, put it into a view that they can digest. It's just an analogy that really helps them go. And I do think you're right. I mean, I think we can't even prepare them and can't hope to prepare them for the future of construction and technology because it's going to be so vastly different by the time we get there. Right. Tannis, you hit this earlier that this industry gets beat up for being a laggard. Well, it's just depending on which stick you measure us by, right? Because it's not like the structures and things that we built are smaller, easier, to put together. It's not like the components of our buildings, the components of our stadiums, our hospitals, our laboratories, the innovative things that get built are far further along. And the way that we build them is far further along and safer. So the measuring stick is, sure, do you use an iPad or not? Yeah, so maybe we're still in the laptop stage and we need to get to that iPad, iPhone, something else in the future, but we will get there. And it's people like you, Dylan, that not only practice but teach. And I'm gonna say you practice, teach, and preach because we definitely got you on your up on your soapbox for a little bit, and that was awesome.
Sorry.
No, I love it. No, this is We said this in the pre-call. We'll say it again. They are tired of hearing me, for sure. Tannis is on her way to being tired of being heard. And that should be the case, right? Because it's got to come from you all, from people doing it, teaching it. And so for that, we appreciate you doing that. We appreciate you joining us for today, man. It's been awesome to get to know you, and I'm sure our listeners are digging this one.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Well, listen, you guys all know the drill. Dylan is going to stay with us, and we are going to move into the construction technology news of the week. All right, Tannis, you always bring the good ones. What do you got for me today?
Well, I have to say, Jeff, I looked for an update on edible cement to see if there was any case studies or user stories. Couldn't find any. So I'll
broken teeth reviews.
Right.
What?
I figured there'd be something out there by now, but nothing yet. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for that. I'll have to set up a Google alert for edible cement, but no stories yet. I'm waiting. So whoever's out there using edible cement, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, share some videos or something. I need to see this. I need to see it in action. My news story today, I've got two of them actually. The first one, from the Harvard Business Review, which surprised me a little bit because we don't see a ton of construction technology coverage in HBR. So, of course, I had to pop the article open and read it a couple times. The title of the article is "Can the Construction Industry Be Disrupted?" And it's a great read. It's not super long, but it's got some really good historical research data in there, and a few things that as I was reading, I was like, no, that's not us. But it did pivot kind of gracefully into an analysis of how the industry is using construction technology, but it referenced the typical articles that we hear come up, underinvestment in technology, lagging productivity, laggard in construction tech. But what I thought was interesting was a researcher conducted interviews with skilled craft professionals in 1993. So it's toward technological innovation in the construction industry. And what they found was, with very few exceptions, people welcome new tools, and they generally appreciated technology that would make work safer, more productive, and they would take pride in using tools that would enable them to do their jobs more effectively. So this whole perception that, there's this whole contingent in our industry that's just technologically averse and, they're just resistant to technology. I mean, yes, you find pockets of that in construction. You find it in every industry. Frankly, it doesn't matter what tech you're deploying or what industry you're in. Somebody somewhere is going to say, "I don't want it," and that's okay. That's what makes us interesting as human beings, right? We all have different perspectives, but I thought that was a great insight from the article, and really what it pivoted towards at the end was we're not seeing revolution in construction innovation. We're seeing evolution. It's incremental. And part of the reason for that is construction is not manufacturing. We don't have stationary production lines, and it's not quite that straightforward. If you've been on a construction site, you know exactly what we're talking about. Machines moving around, people, vertical buildings. One of the topics in the articles this week was looking at robotics and the deployment of robotics on construction sites. It's not just about having a robot navigating around a single floor building. You're talking multi-story and construction ongoing. It's great to have robots on site, but there's a lot more complexity in managing that because you don't want your robot falling off the 5th floor of a building that's being constructed. So you have to think about that when you're using technology. So it's more complicated to deploy, and we've got some challenges that we have to overcome just by nature of the type of work that we do. But the other point that was highlighted in here was, subcontractors really being heavy employers of construction trades professionals, and they're not always being a lot in the way of project margin to invest heavily in technology that teams are not sure yet whether it's going to assist with productivity improvements or safety improvements or improvements in other areas. But there is the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, where there was $100 million allocated for advanced digital construction management systems and related technology. So, having access to funding is going to help organizations try new tech, do some R&D, and make some of those investments to facilitate improvements in project execution. That's a good thing. And that's not just in the United States, that's globally. We're seeing that type of that type of approach. So we're moving. It's not necessarily revolutionary; it's evolutionary, but that's okay.
Yep.
Progress is key. And Dylan, to your point earlier, as long as we're collaborating and moving forward together, we're gonna reach higher peaks and do greater things, and that's what it's all about. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll hit on a couple of things. I think the public should want evolution, not revolution. Because if we were to do a revolution instead of an evolution, things would not work. Certain things, right? Whenever you see a revolution, a complete disruption in almost any industry, there is a number of unintended consequences that happen. Well, we can't have bridges falling. We can't have buildings falling. Unfortunately, if you've been watching the news lately, we've had a couple of cranes fall, and you want us to then put an autonomous robot and not worry that this was a fixed piece of equipment that went on fire. Like these things happen. We live in a world where danger and are first and foremost, you said it, Dylan, quality, safety, profitability. I want every person on every job site to go home to their family every night, right? That's probably the first and foremost for everybody. And that's why it needs to be an evolution, not a revolution. But I will go again back to KP Reddy. And we didn't cover this yesterday. He and I covered it in a pre-call. It also, you've heard this over and over. Oh, well, I could order, I don't go to the car. They don't send me the parts of my car so I can assemble it in the driveway, right? I just pick out what I want and they send it to me. And he said, yeah, so think about that asset for a second. And Dylan, what if I told one of your customers that, yeah, we'll do that for you. You can now order a building, but in 6 years, you're going to need a new one.
We'd have a lot of problems.
Yeah. What if I told you these iPhones are faster and cheaper and they're mostly robotically made and we manufacture them real fast? And what if I told you your building had an 18-month life cycle? You'd kill me. You'd say that'd be a non-starter from the beginning. So we're not going to do that, right? We are going to adapt and evolve parts and pieces of that so that we can build buildings better, more efficiently, with in safer environments, more prefabricated, more off-site, consistently. But never, ever, ever are we really going to build a building in a warehouse and ship it. It's just not possible at the scale in which we need to build, nor for the life cycle that we need to build it for. So, secondly, that's sort of one of those things where I'm like, McKinsey, you guys got to get off our backs here because you don't get it. We're very, very different. And I would love for you to sit in your building, McKinsey, at the 40th second floor and go to sit down in your seat and not worry if the chair was put together well, but worried if you're going to fall through the floor. And realize a team of collaborating construction tradespeople made that possible. And you never freaking have that thought when you sit in your chair. You just don't. And you don't do that because we aren't revolutionary, we're evolutionary, and we will continue to push that forward. So, Dylan, I'm interested, we've seen a couple of groups try, right? And we do have some really powerful tools coming, but what's your take on, this industry being disrupted versus, evolved?
I think the industry evolving, there's also the dynamic of, I think we're trying to keep pace with technology as well, right? Because I think there's a lot of technology excitement that technology sometimes outpaces us. So therefore, there's just so much saturation of technology options, and that makes it look like we're lagging when we're not, right? Because there's so many different tools, options. I mean, there are use cases that I'm not necessarily going to specify, but there are technology initiatives in construction that have started and just fallen flat on its face, right? And that's because there may have been some form of rapid progression approach that wasn't necessarily fully thought out, right? And quite honestly, like you said, we don't have the
Katera.
Yeah.
I can say that now. There's nobody left to yell at me.
but
we work.
but the reality is, I think when technology outpaces, right, it seems like there is a lag when you have these revolutionary groups, if you will, that's right, trying to kind of completely change the game. Which, hey, we need some of that too, right? Because we need some of that dreaming, we need some of that aspiration. But at the end of the day, like you said very rightly, we can't rely on going into a building that isn't sound, right? We have a lot of peace of mind when we go into a school, into a hospital. I mean, the things we build, the spaces we build are critical. They're not every project we build, no matter the size, right? The amount of love and care that goes into it from construction professionals is because we know that there are people behind us that's going to use that space, right? Doesn't matter what it is. That's the reason we build it safely. That's the reason we make sure that there's quality behind what we do. So really and truly, while the technology trumpets keep playing, and I think we need to continue to kind of dance to that music to an extent, I also think it's a bad idea just to kind of race towards it without, really understanding the steps in the dance.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. One last thing too there that was part of that analogy is you also don't, well, unless this is a classic car that you found in a lot somewhere and it's worth it, you don't ever gut a car and build it back together so that you can use it for a new purpose. Yet we do that with buildings and spaces, and we need to be thinking that way consistently. So stop thinking about this that way and start thinking about it the other way. So that was my soapbox. So thanks for handing over the soapbox to me, Dylan, and Tannis. Thank you. So what else you got for us, Tannis? I think you got another.
Make one last point on that, Dylan. I think you've got VCs out there madly scribbling notes right now because blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics, as there's dreamers out there really ideating around the use of technology. You see these rapid focus areas when it comes to startups and investment and teams doing R&D. But as we're talking through this right now, that incremental evolutionary approach is what's driving the industry forward. So I think you're spot on. You need dreamers out there that are setting new finish lines that we can keep working towards. But I think as an industry, we have to recognize that reaching those finish lines is not going to happen overnight. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of engagement throughout the industry to make that progress. And we don't just kind of leapfrog from one line to the next, as much as some of us would really like to be able to do that from time to time. My next article pivots quite nicely from that concept. It's from Ontario Construction News. Ontario launching 3 new mobile skilled trades classrooms. So, news article from Canada. The Canuck here is going to dig into some Canadian news today. The Ontario government has announced $5.4 million in design and build 3 tech classrooms. And these tech classrooms are mobile. So I love this because so many people are going to gain benefit from it, but they're going to travel across the province of Ontario and teach students and young people who are considering careers in construction all about the skilled trades and doing that using technology, using simulators, and really tech enabling those mobile classrooms. I love this concept because we've talked a few times on the show about the skilled trades challenge that we're having both in Canada and the United States and globally. It's a very real challenge that the industry is facing. And this is it's certainly not solving the problem, but it's going to help plant the seed of excitement in at least in this case, the province of Ontario and the next generation of construction professionals. And that's gonna apply to both engineering as well as the trades, right? Because somebody might engage in this mobile tech classroom and say, hey, this is really cool. I'd like to become an architect. Fantastic. That's good too. We need architects, we need engineers, we need procurement professionals, we need skilled trades professionals. The construction industry is calling. If you are out there listening and you are considering a career in construction, talk to one of us, reach out to somebody who works in the industry because it's I mean, I might be a little biased, but it's the best industry to work in. But this got me excited. I love the focus on youth and really getting people excited about careers in construction, because we're passionate advocates for it. And the more awareness, the more excitement we can generate within youth and ultimately even outside of high school, university students, come join our industry. And this is the Ontario government stepping up and making an investment. I'm a big fan of this. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I love the statistics already. They've got a 24% increase in registrations for apprenticeships year over year since they started, with a pilot program and have started really focusing on it. And I think this is where the US can really learn from Canada, in that, this was a governmental organization that put this together, and it is bilateral, it goes across, right? They don't care what trade you get into. They just want to get you excited. I think, and they may be doing this, so this is just an article. So my one piece of advice is, when you set this up for the students, you ought to have the parents show up, because one of the biggest drivers against children entering the trades is their parents thinking it's not going to lead to a future, whereas we all know that it leads to a high-paying, highly valued, highly satisfying job in the end, and that there are a multitude of paths to come through, from welding to detailing to, you can make the jump to GC and construction management to scheduling to, you can go get your PhD in lots of things. So this is it's a fantastic way to do it. I love the mobility. The mobility itself is flashy. Flashy means if they're at a school job fair, it's flashy. All the kids are going to go get in line. Are all those kids going to end up in the skilled trades? No. But are the ones that were apt to end up in the skilled trades going to end up having an access to? Yes. So that is the key. And when they're doing it and saying, oh, well, I'm going to go be, a welder, a pipe fitter, and their friends are like, oh man, you're going to use those cool things. Like, again, it is just a social acceptance. It's right. Understanding and changing that mindset of, I'm sorry, but we all think about it. A plumber with a butt crack is what everybody thinks of when they think of a plumber, or they think of it as some negative, as you're going to have to do hard labor. No, this is like the most rewarding job. And by the way, to my plumbers, like, y'all are some of the smartest, most talented people I've ever met. So that really does do you not a justice. So I think this is awesome. And I think we really in the United States could learn from this, and we could learn, I had this conversation with someone earlier. The one stone I'll throw is the pockets across the U.S. that are innovating and showing the path ahead, whether that's for women in construction, diversity and inclusion in construction, changing the skilled trades. We're all still kind of pulling in our own direction. We need to all grab the rope at one end and just pull it. And that's what I think this is, right? This is we're going to drive this cool truck around, and you're going to go sign up with whoever you're going to sign up with. Have fun. So that's my thoughts. Dylan, I know, you spoke pretty highly about your trade partners, came from a little bit of that world. How does this type of, I'd call it marketing, engagement, how does that sit with you? What are your thoughts?
Oh, very, very exciting, to be honest. I mean, just the very titling, and I think the approach to it is exciting. When we talk about trades, I mean, we know that everything that we do kind of hinges with our trade partners. There is no general contractor without the success of a trade partner. So I think it's great, especially, being someone in academia and education. It's exciting to even hear, right, the prospects of something that's actually going to be, because it's not just, oh, come to us, we'll teach you. This is almost outreach, or this is outreach. Right. And I've always, it's funny because, I pride myself on taglines, if you will, sometimes. So when talking about ConTech, I've always also kind of done this little extension and said we need to talk about context, in terms of the overall, the big picture. Right. And even when we, most recently, I had a challenge in trying to explain to someone where some of these software and technology tools reside within the overall picture of construction technology, right? I mean, where do these pieces fit, if you will? And I was talking about construction technology being the dining room, a construction project management platform being the table, and all these different software and hardware being the chairs that you bring to the table, right? All these data collection processes, tools, whatever you may call it, are these chairs that come and sit at the table, bringing all this data together. And then you throw in the fancy artificial intelligence there, right? It's almost like the diner has now come and sit on those chairs and is now eating at the table, right? So we have this beautiful picture of all these things happening, and we were able to then communicate and have a richer discourse about what the software means now, because there's context, right? And I think trying to tap into when these mobile classrooms go on a roadshow, I think talking about I was doing a Sunday school class where I once referred to MEP as morals, ethics, and principles. It all flows in us, and if it doesn't flow in us, it doesn't. It's almost like a personal being doesn't work, just like an MEP system, right? So I think giving contextual ideas and thoughts in a mobile unit to engage students, I think, is something that's very exciting, and I wish more governments use that as an example and kind of pursue that track. That's great.
That is awesome. We're gonna just bring you on the news every week, Dylan, and we're gonna have to add a spot like Dylan's analogy of the week, and then I'm gonna start stealing them because I love them, and I'm gonna steal them from you. Tannis, that is awesome. I'm actually going to pivot us right into one again. Man, KP, I'm going to have to give you credit, man. You're like infecting both episodes here because my next article is how Skanska's drone program evolved from novelty to must-have tech. And if you listened to KP Reddy last week, he said, I don't think we'd have the number of people in construction right now, young people, if it wasn't for drones and BIM. Right? Those are the two things that really over the last 5 years to 7 years have really continued to entice people that this is a spot. In fact, he talked to his own son about, you like to fly those drones. Why don't you come on over and be a drone pilot in construction? And his son was like, that's a thing. And he was like, yeah, that's a thing. So this is great to see Skanska, because Skanska is one of those larger companies that has the capability to sort of get involved in things before they're a thing. So in this, they talk about how they really kind of started this program in drones in 2015. So that's right. That's 8 years ago. So we're 8 years in. These are pretty commonplace these days. But at the time, it was, just a bit of a marketing ploy, a bit of a cool thing when they showed some cool pictures and, but it has evolved now. They have 70 people across different departments in the U.S. Arm that are now deploying and using drones. Now, the drone technology's come a long way, right? We have GPS involved. We can plan our flight plans. Yes, you still have to be there. And some of the regulations and some of the federal aviation has really helped us with that, or with that adoption by setting out some rules and some standards, and then allowing us, yes, we still have to watch those fly, but we're not really flying drones in reality. We're plotting out their courses and we're kind of watching them. Maybe in some cases, if we're noticing anomalies or whatnot, we're stopping the drone flight and bringing it back and kind of getting a better idea from a better angle of what we're seeing. But, most of them they're autonomous, right? And they're just flying and we're watching. And, this article really dips into, groups like Skanska, again, have the capability to jump in feet first on some things without a plan, without an idea, and just say, hey, we're just going to get involved and see what happens. And that's, we're talking about this for Skanska. Winter's doing it in some areas as well. And so almost all construction companies have something, but now they've got tangible things and they're talking about how you should have a plan. What do you need the drones to do? How can you team with your trade partners to identify your best use case scenarios? You don't just fly drones to fly drones. You need to have a reason. And, again, just covered one with KP on, the news there on flying drones to inspect bridges and look for cracks and look for things and analyze the through computer vision, analyze the scans, the photos quickly. This is huge opportunities for drones, and drone pilots is a whole new job, which means a whole new group of people to come to our industry. So I thought that was interesting because from a trades truck, they should really be flying a drone around that trades truck. So hopefully, another opportunity for them to fly a drone around it. And so Tannis, I'm interested, what do you think about drones and how, except for when this kind of article, they're almost not cool anymore. They're almost the laptop, Dylan.
So it's funny you mentioned use cases for drones, because I had a conversation with somebody, it was about 3-4 years ago, and they were in a bit of a panic because they had bought a small army of drones and had no use case. They bought them because everybody was posting about drones on social media, and they were like, clearly everybody has drones, so we should go buy some drones. So they did. With no plan for them at all. So they had these drones, sitting around some warehouse somewhere, and his boss was not super happy with him because he had spent a bunch of money on drones, and they were all just sitting in the warehouse. So he was asking, like, what do I do with these drones now? I need to prove that the investment is, again, return on investment, right? He's like, I need to justify the expenditure. And to your point, Jeff, they're not novelty anymore. They're still cool. Drones are cool. Drones will always be cool, but we're past the point of it just being kind of marketing hype. But in saying that, there are still some groups out there that it's conference discussion material, it's marketing material, but they're not actively deploying drones across a portfolio of projects. It's still very much in the R&D phase. So there's still organizations that are lagging a little bit on drone utilization, drone deployment. But again, incremental progress, right? Not everybody's going to move at the same speed. Some organizations are going to have much larger investment budgets, and larger organizations will have that financial capability to make those investments and try things out. And that it's great when we see organizations like Skanska doing that, because when you read articles like this for small to mid-sized companies who maybe were on the fence for a while, there's proven use cases now. This is not, it's not something that you're just seeing cool videos on LinkedIn anymore. There's a very real business need for drones within construction. And there's a lot of different use cases. My background's in heavy industrial construction. So, tablets, even the use of mobile phones on site, drones in operating facilities need to be intrinsically safe, right? So that creates some complexity for the utilization of drones within a facility that's operating. You can't necessarily have a non-intrinsically safe device kind of rotating around a piece of industrial equipment for a multitude of reasons. So that's created some challenges in deployment, but things we're navigating, right? Back to our earlier discussion, construction isn't simple, and our industry is dynamic. It's complex, and it's not always straightforward. But I think this article is great for the purpose of helping organize small to mid-sized organizations along the journey of tech discovery and making those investments. When you see that larger organizations are generating benefit from that and investing more heavily in those departments, I think you're going to see more adoption from the small to mid-sized companies as well. So that's always great.
That is awesome. What's your thoughts on drones from your perspective, Dylan?
Man, I love drones for what they are, right? It really and truly gives you a different vantage point. A vantage point that you can't get with anything else, I feel, on a typical construction job site. And the affordability of drones has just increased so much now that, you can easily expense it on a job, or I don't want to say easily, but somewhat, the affordability is significantly better at this point than it was, say, 6-7 years ago. And then I know a lot of people now call it a drone program and so on and so forth. And we do a couple of drone captures on my project at Ethos Classical, and I think it's pretty neat because winter ConTech team comes out. They'll have their pre-planned flight path. They'll get it done. I mean, sometimes they come do the flight path and, they'll be gone before we even know it because they're on to the next job site, right? So, but what I think what's important, again, kind of reeling it back into the project manager's perspective, right? It's so important that this data, if you will, that the data is collected, but what do we do now with it, right? So we house it in some location, or now, for example, talking about use cases, Tannis, I think you were kind of walking through, use cases have kind of expanded, and you were saying that, someone had bought a mini army of drones and wasn't exactly too sure what to do with it, right? Going back to return on implementation, if you have
Exactly.
right? There's no better way to figure out your use cases than really practicing. So I think sometimes, we kind of have these assets and tools and we're like, well, how do we really use it? And we're waiting for someone else to teach us, but really and truly, we have to innovate that workflow. We have to innovate the process. And really and truly, I think, talking about articles that are published about Skanska or any GC that's probably having a drone program, it's learning that has developed them to talk highly of what their drone program is or what they're able to do with it, right? Talking about what KP is talking about in terms of analytics. We probably didn't have the AI tools that they possibly are leveraging to do those inspections a couple of years ago. As AI kind of has evolved and expanded, and now there's more data being fed. Now there's more use cases to leverage with the drone. So I think it's a time factor, but really and truly, I think drones are pretty exciting. I think they're going to be pretty standard on job sites not too long from now. Solely because I think drone programs are advancing so rapidly. I mean, there are so many things. I wasn't familiar that there are actually conferences for drone users, and recently I've kind of observed that, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy, And I think it's very, very interesting that there's just so much dynamic conversation around this one item. Because you have robotics, now you have drones, you have AI, all these different aspects kind of working collectively. And going back to my table and chair example, right? I mean, I'm pretty excited about the drone chair, if you will, and what's going to happen with it. Let's hope a good diner sits on it so we get more at the table.
I hope you are right. And, people are dusting off their HoloLenses too. They've got fleets of HoloLenses sitting around too. So don't worry. Those are getting dusted off as well. Lots of innovation everywhere. I got one last one that I think is really, really cool. This is ENR News Record. Free digital tool tracks cement sector's decarbonization efforts. So, we talk a lot on this show about green and about being more sustainable, et cetera. And it's really awesome to see this effort. A carbon capture and storage feasibility study at Heidelberg's Materials plant in Mitchell, Indiana is the largest project of its kind in the U.S., according to the Green Cement Technology Tracker. So you can now go to the Green Cement Technology Tracker and track the preliminary list of carbon capture projects in the cement industry. This is really, really cool because it is a partnership between the Global Cement and Concrete Association and the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, Lead IT, in collaboration with the UN Climate Change High-Level Champions. So you can get on and check out the data set and look at all of the efforts to capture the carbon emissions and change really the cement and concrete's, I would say, their view. And the view of them, because we all know and we all hear consistently how the combination of concrete and cement are some of the largest polluters in our world. And it's great to see this innovation. It's great to see the data coming. So, a quick one, but an easy one. We love them doing it, right? But we want them to measure it, right, Tannis? So this is measurable.
And to your point, Jeff, we've talked about cement production and the carbon footprint. Cement production makes up 8% of global carbon emissions, which is substantial. And there's a lot of discussion around pivoting away from the use of cement to other materials. So I'm excited here to see the collaboration between a multitude of parties in looking at reducing the carbon footprint and really measuring the impact of these carbon capture and decarbonization projects and enabling the public to see that, because by by enabling data access and data visualization across the industry, other organizations and project teams can benchmark their own performance against what's being recorded and shared online. So this goes back to the collective collaboration discussion that we were having earlier. This tool is a great way to share information, and it's going to be, I'm sure, good and not so good information, and that's helpful because as an industry we can evaluate that and iterate and improve and ultimately drive innovation, and that benefits the industry as a whole. So those data points are going to lend a lot of insight into where we're going as an industry, specifically on those projects and organizations that are driving similar initiatives. We'll be able to leverage that data to benchmark their performance. So I don't see any downside here. I applaud the efforts of the teams that are investing in this. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, and for your data nerds, go out there and I believe you can download the data sets as well. So go down to the data sets and start playing. This is where it's going to be fun. Dylan's over there going, "Oh, I see a class project."
I mean, to be honest with you, the project manager in me, I mean, just the article's tagline of tracks decarbonization, right? I think that in itself is exciting because we talk about so many processes, so many things we do that we haven't refined a process of tracking. So it's always nice when you know that there is a broad set initiative to track something. Because really and truly, tracking creates data creates ability to analyze creates better decisions. So I am glad that that's kind of the trend on that, and really and truly we should be pushing to track a bunch of things because green building, hey, there's green in the green. When it comes down to construction as a whole, I mean we have a bunch of things that we can save on and make money on if we're kind of smart about it. So tracking helps with that.
Yeah, and Tannis, I think you said earlier we didn't have to worry about the tagline. You just said, I don't know, we might have a new one. There's green in green. So with that, Dylan, if you have a microphone, just drop it because you just killed it. There's green in green. That is Dylan John. Dylan, thank you so much for sitting down. I'm super impressed, super excited to meet you.
Thank you very, very much, Jeff, and thanks, Tannis. Really love being on here, and I appreciate you inviting me to chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for your insights, Dylan.
Well, hey, everybody go check out Dylan online. And thanks, Tannis. Thank you for sitting down today and joining me at the end of our week. When they get this, it'll be the beginning of their week. So
absolutely. Always a pleasure, Jeff. And thanks for the insights, Dylan. This was a great show. Really appreciated you taking the time to sit down and share your experience. And I know our listeners are either scribbling notes still or reflecting on all the information that you shared today. Thanks again. It's fantastic view from a project manager's lens and a view from the field.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, and I'm always open to network, so connect with me on LinkedIn, and who knows, might have a multitude of chats as a result of this, right? So
I hope you do.
I connected. So.
Hey, I hope you do, and I hope we see you on at a couple of conferences coming up. Meet you in person.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Dylan John. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to the show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.